Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. So, right before this recording, found out that my guest and I have a close mutual friend. I was just hanging out with his co-founder over in Ojai, California, and had just an amazing connection with his co-founder. So I'm really excited to be able to speak to the other half of the team. He's the co-founder of Pella, a $100 million phone case startup that created an entirely new category. And Lomi is a record-breaking 9.5 million crowdsourced campaign for the world's first smart. He's a 7 times founder who started his journey, believe it or not, as a top toy distributor. And then, like many successful entrepreneurs, they have their ups and their downs, and he faced some financial difficulties and eventually bankruptcy. But as we've always talked about, sometimes our biggest challenges often turn around into creating our biggest opportunities. And this foundation of failure started again. Eventually, he built and exited a 9-figure business, building 2 other 8-figure businesses shortly thereafter. And now he's looking to inspire the next generation of founders by writing this book, Startup Santa, by Toy Maker's Tale, 10 Business Lessons Learned from Timeless. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Brad Pedersen to the show. Welcome, my friend.
Charles, what an amazing introduction. I hope I can live up to that. It sounds pretty heady for sure.
Well, it's a well-deserved introduction. Now, you guys, you've run the gamut. You've had your success, you've had your failures. In a recent podcast, I talked about how a lot of times I find that first-time entrepreneurs are kind of like teenagers. They might have a business plan. And you go, so what's your projections over the course of the next year? And they're like, we're going to make, $100 million. And I'm like, really? Really? How much revenue have you brought in so far? We're pre-revenue. And, they don't know everything is awesome and fantastic. And they haven't experienced any challenges. And they're already putting the deposit down on the McLaren. And, so, but then you get to a point where you get those more seasoned entrepreneurs that somewhere in your bio, I think I read that, you've had your battle scars,
Yeah.
and you get those battle scars and they humble you. You become much more strategic and aware. And rather than only looking at one side, you look at both sides and you take everything into context. And while it's still taking risk, they're more calculated risks. So talk to me a little bit about sort of this journey of entrepreneurship and how it took you to this place where you're leading the industry in 2 categories.
Yeah. Well, it's the great paradox of life. For us to experience joy, happiness, success, we also have to be willing to go through challenges, heartbreak, pain. That is just the way it is. There is no avoiding it. And if you have big goals and aspirations for your life, the bigger your goals, the bigger their aspirations, the bigger the pain and the challenges you should expect that you're going to have to endure. Always sunshine, only desert. You need the storms of life to perfect and to help just create who you are. So pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And so the idea is, what is the purpose of your pain? So when you're experiencing challenges and pain, you got to ask yourself, why am I going through this? And what's it teaching me? And who can I become as a result of this? Most people choose to become victims and just to simply surrender to the challenge and let the challenge be greater than them. But the real trick, and for entrepreneurs who really have big, hairy, audacious goals and who really want to take on big problems, is to basically look at that pain as the crucible. Like gold is refined in fire. So this challenge is not set there to define you, but rather to refine you to become the person who can actually handle these type of situations. I started off as a toy distributor. It was actually very humble beginnings. From my basement, I bootstrapped this company and we had some early success, which I think most entrepreneurs need that. You need some kind of traction, some kind of sense of product market fit so you can get going and create some momentum out of that. And that started to snowball into a little bit more success and, raise a little money to go along with that, and then on and on and on. And soon I became the largest toy distributor in Canada. And, and I did this in my 20s and I was flying high and feeling pretty good. And my ego was feeling well. cared for because people wanted me to speak, and I was getting awards, and I was this hot startup from somewhere in Canada you're not supposed to be in the toy business, and I was making a lot of strides. And pride comes before the fall. And I've come to learn that a little bit of ego can actually lead to a lot of overhead and just oversight of
Yeah.
really important things that you should be inspecting in terms of what you're expecting for your business. So, yeah, I tell people that, mastery is found on the mountaintop of mistakes. I've got my fair share of those. And as you always referenced, that there is a lot of battle scars, but your scars are there to prove that you were stronger than what tried to kill you. And they should be good reminders if you're willing to take the lessons from them.
So you brought up a few different things I just want to touch upon. And it's important to remind yourself that you want to embrace this discomfort. And I'm at the gym and I
Mm.
was like, if I want growth, I have to be willing to put more weight on the bar and bring it almost to that point of failure. Most people want to give up, but you give it that one extra rep and you get most of that growth. I just do very little weight on the bar and I could do whatever I want and take it easy, but I'm not going to get the growth. But then if I don't show up, then I atrophy. So what is your thoughts as it relates to that?
I love the fact you used the gym as a reference. I do that all the time too. And it's the discipline of doing the reps consistently, which is a great metaphor for just the work it requires to build anything great, including your body or a company, and the ability to stress it, right? Like you're only going to grow through stress. I mean, this is what I love is that we're surrounded by biomimicry, like all of nature teaches us these lessons, right? You prune trees, which looks like you're hurting them, to grow back stronger, right? In fact, we could go down the rabbit hole of trees in general, like how the great cedars in California, how their roots are intertwined and they support each other, speaking to the importance of teams. But I love the idea that nature teaches us the principles of success. And it's the thing we need, right? We actually, like, to be human, there's a few things you fundamentally need. You need, food, water, shelter, companionship, meaning, purpose. And I would add to that list, you need pain. You need to struggle. It's a part of forming who you are. And, it even speaks to the way we parent. We want to be snowplow parents. And it's actually the worst thing that our kids need. Ernest Hemingway had this great quote that said, the world breaks all of us, and some of us are stronger in the broken places. So there is like always this dichotomy of the two different outcomes of what happens. Like what happens is going to happen to everyone. And your pain is going to be different than my pain, but it's pain and it's a part of the process. And the point is, the purpose of your pain is it's the pruning of your life that can reveal something stronger and better in you than you could ever imagine. And that you need to know that you're more powerful than your problems, more courageous than your challenges, more formidable than your fears. And life is tough, but you can choose to prove that you are tougher.
I love everything that you're saying.
Mhm.
Pain, it builds resilience and it is what helps the body and life and everything continue to grow, because it's the pain that we're talking about is something more to strive for, to embrace,
Mhm.
to eliminate.
Mhm. Yeah, and like we're certainly not promoting masochism here, but the point is, like when you go to the gym, you're training your body to actually be a better performing tool. So why shouldn't we be willing to train our minds, our emotions, our businesses through the same process? That it is just a part of how we grow. And I'm assuming there's some pain in that process. And, as I think back, I've been through three bankruptcies. And as an entrepreneur, I can tell you that was my greatest fear. It just was too daunting, mostly because my identity, so much of who I was caught up in what I did. And that's actually a wrong way to create identity for yourself. But it gave me an opportunity to reset, because we don't tend to stop. Like you don't learn from what happens. You learn from reflecting what happens and then unpacking the lessons. And I was just kind of marching along in this business, doing Groundhog Day, just work, 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 and progressing. And actually, the business model was broken. It was sort of anemic in terms of margins. And that event forced me to stop, recalibrate, choose again, hopefully better this time. And it launched me in a completely different path from being a toy distributor to a toy manufacturer. And then the next event that happened, which I got fired from a company I founded a few years later, forced me to stop, reflect, learn, choose again. And that launched me on my path with my current business partners who you've mentioned, Jeremy. And I'm so blessed because my two business partners today are incredible humans. They were great complements for each other. And that I would never have actually been introduced to these opportunities if I first hadn't hit these adversities that I was able to, by choice, turn to my advantage.
There are two questions that I'm constantly asking myself when faced with a challenge. The first question is, why is this the best thing in the world that could happen to me right now? And then the next question is, why did this happen for me? You want to remain powerful as possible. And the most powerful emotion in the human body is gratitude. You're not giving it
Mm,
away, holding it inside. And when you maintain that power, it allows you to think more clearly, come up with better decisions, and so forth. And, you know, when you look at a situation and then you say, why is this the best thing that could happen to me right now? You're very solutions oriented and you think in terms of solutions, or you look at, so why did this happen for us? Again, you get the team focused on the solutions and in a powerful state of mind versus a reacting state of mind, which lowers productivity levels, lowers morale, and creates dysfunction inside of an organization.
love that. Yeah, I 100% agree with that in terms of, why is this happening for me, not to me? Am I going to be defined by this process or am I going to be refined by going through it? And yeah, I think, I just add on to it that I've come to learn there's two emotions that drive all human behavior, the two strongest ones. And first one is fear, which it's natural, right? That's what saved us for thousands of years from being eaten by other mammals and or other being prey to something else. And the other one is hope.
Yeah.
And I would say love is stronger than hope, but hope is the precursor to love. So I sort of see hope as that precursor. And you're talking about the two different dynamics, abundance versus scarcity, which is why I think the gratitude mindset, it's so important because nature abhors a vacuum. If in the absence of nothing, you will default to fear and scarcity. So you have to fill it up with hope, which comes from grounding yourself in gratitude. Otherwise, you'll just default to the bigger motivator. However, fear is just more natural. It's natural, it's not optimal.
Yeah.
And when you're there, you're anxious, and scarcity and the gratitude, abundance, hopefulness is really where we want to spend our time.
And in one case, you're moving to something, and in the other case, you're moving away from something. And growth is about moving to something and
Hmm.
continuing to push through.
Yeah.
So it's funny. A lot of the most successful people that we bring in on the podcast, one of the things that inevitably the conversation moves towards is mindset because it's so important to manage that mindset because we are paid in proportion to the quality of the decisions that we've made. And sometimes the decisions aren't good and there's a consequence for that. But let's actually move a little beyond on the mindset for a little bit. And let's talk a little bit on the tactical side of things. You experienced a number of different bankruptcies and setbacks and whatnot. Then you turned around and you created these wonderful, magnificent, very successful companies. Let's say your son is probably doing about $1 million or so a year. He wants a dream story like his father has attained. What tactical advice are you going to give your son that's going to help him scale and avoid some of the frustrations that you experienced?
Yeah. Well, the very first thing I would say is the best investment you're ever going to make is in yourself. It's not about having more, it's about becoming more. And in order for you to build something of significance, a enterprise that's, scalable, sustainable, and hopefully sellable. If the other two are true, that's probably a possibility. You have to be able to first develop yourself. It's really a who question. I mean, almost all our problems come down to who. It starts with you, and then it's about the associations that you create around you. And I think, let's step back and just say that the why, which Simon Sinek made an iconic term, is really the starting point. You have to have a hope for the future, a big, hairy, audacious goals. We get compensated for the value we create. That's just the fundamentals behind entrepreneurship. If the more value you create, the more compensation you can expect, both in the size and revenue of the business, as well as what you personally would benefit from. Those are byproducts of the value create more value, get more of that.
Yep.
So you have to have that why. Once you have the why, then it's the who. Who are the people that you need to be associated with? And just understanding that, this is the innovator's dilemma, that most people who start with an idea don't have the ability to scale it to its full possibility. So the forcing function is, well, then who are the people I need? What are the systems I have to build to ensure that, execution is happening? Because we have to all be singing from the same song sheet. And without, people without execution is a fallacy in terms of trying to create anything great. And then, of course, what are the resources behind that are going to allow it all to propagate? So those are the three things they have to be thinking about constantly to scale a business and expand it to its full potential. Is how do I continue to find the right people, make sure the systems are in place to ensure that we are rowing in cadence, and finally that we have the right resources, which is the cash and other things that are required to really drive that business to its full possibilities. And, it all starts with developing you first, because people don't care what you say or really what you do. They watch what you do, but ultimately they're going to connect with the way you make them feel. And the way you make them feel important is by first establishing a really big why, and then eliciting them that this is a mission that they need to be a part of, and that they would then internalize it as, I want to be a part of this mission because I want to be a part of this team. And I also identify with the outcomes that we're trying to create that are going to create a lot of value, and they're going to benefit as a result of it.
Speaking of innovator's dilemma, as all business owners, there is a little bit of a dilemma or an interesting type of disruption that's happening right now. It wasn't since the 90s, early 2000s that we've had disruption like we've had right now at a magnitude that is unprecedented where it comes to AI. Because every business, regardless of the industry that you're in, is going to be somehow disrupted by AI. And most people are not prepared for the type of disruption. But one thing that you mentioned, which for all those people that are listening, wondering, is AI going to replace my job? Is AI going to do this and that? In some cases, I mean, we're seeing this with a manufacturing client of ours that, what he did as he introduced AI as an experiment to see how the team would react. The team actually delegated their non-relevant or less valuable activities to AI, but they took it upon themselves to take on more valuable activities. So they embraced it, but found ways to add more value, right? As long as you have that mindset of where can I add more value? What is the ultimate result that we're trying to achieve? Then your job is fine. But it does come down to execution. And I think this is where it's going to be an interesting sort of disruption, is that information will largely be commoditized to some extent because all the information we're ever going to need is going to be accessible to us and personalized over time. But no amount of AI is really going to replace execution, because AI is only the canvas. The execution is going to end up being the artist. And so that you still have to execute. And so execution is going to be key. But how are you going to develop yourself in a way that allows you to keep up with the changing demands and disruptions? Are you only looking one step ahead, or are you looking ahead in the future? Where do you go with that?
I love this question because it's very topical for the moment. And I want to start off with the idea that is somewhat controversial, that there's more that's the same than is different when it comes to human behavior. So humans are pretty predictable. And disruption, by the way, is not new. I mean, we've been disrupting ourselves for forever. It's accelerated at a rapid pace over the last 100 years and will continue to accelerate at a rapid pace just based upon Moore's law and Power's law and all these things that are just rapidly accelerating us forward. But human behavior is very predictable. And, I'm a big believer that everybody comes to this planet with some unique gift, some genius within them that they are meant to unlock and unleash in terms of creating value. And if AI is going to disrupt your current career path, then it's an opportunity to reimagine what it is that is your creative genius deep down inside. Because quite frankly, you said it very well, that AI can't actually do the execution. It can do some really nifty things. What
Yeah.
they didn't expect is that humans would just be that much more productive. They would use the technology and the tools to just be more effective and create more value. And at the end of the day, humans have the creative touch. So as long as that's the case, this just becomes a tool that helps you just be more effective. I think the best metaphor I've heard is it's Jarvis. It's Iron
Yeah.
Man's Jarvis. You have been given this super powerful tool that can help you be a superhero. So if you
Yeah.
think of it that way, how can you use this tool to unleash your creative genius so you can be the Iron Man in your industry?
That's where the advantage is going to go. Because when you look at the output, the quality of the output is going to be directly related to the quality of the input.
That's right.
But if you know how to ask better questions, you're going to get better answers. And the biggest mistake that I've seen with AI right now is people will put something in, they'll get an output, and then they'll leave it. And I'm like, wait, no, do something different within it just to look at it more, expand it, just see how far it will go. And those are the type of things, because if everybody has the same advantage, if everybody can enter the same prompt and get the same output, then there's no more advantage. But when you can actually push the boundaries beyond the prompt to be able to ask it different questions and see what else can come out of it, that's where there's going to be a big advantage.
Agreed. Yeah. Again, it's what it is. It's liberating people to really lean into their creative genius, because within everybody is that. And unfortunately, I mean, well, we've just seen, if you take a look over the last particularly 20, 30 years, you've seen kind of these low level jobs that are very hands-on tactical, where machines and or computers have replaced it, to free people up to the gig economy to use this thinking and creativity and imagination to then go create things of even more value. And while certain sectors were completely disrupted, brand new ones have been birthed because there's just that much more opportunity that was unleashed by the innovation that came along. But it was the idea that this dynamic technology that keeps coming into the economy is driving brand new progress. It upgrades a standard of living for everybody and increases the opportunity for you to participate in an even more exciting future. And I even relate that back to my disruptions from my businesses along the way. I got disrupted from the way it was to be free to find a way forward in the way it is, and in a better business that I wouldn't have found it otherwise. It gives you the opportunity to choose again, and this time do it different, do it better.
I know we're pushing against the clock. I do want to touch base real quick on the book that you wrote. Tell us a little bit about the book itself. The interesting title.
Okay, so the book is called Startup Santa, A Toy Maker's Tale of 10 Business Lessons Learned Through Timeless Toys. And I actually didn't want to write this book, but as I started going through the process of just writing, and I did it more initially just wanting to have like a record for myself, my family, something I could pass on, a memento of sorts, two things came out of it. Number one is I found out there's something called narrative therapy, where from writing you heal. And I had a bunch of battle scars that I need to that weren't really formed yet. And going through that process of writing really helped me go through some healing, which was kind of surprising. But then some of my colleagues said, hey, do you mind sharing some chapters? And I did. And they said, gosh, you really should release this to the world. So it became a book. And the idea behind it is, I was a toy maker for almost 30 years. I live in Canada, so I am a toy maker from the north. I'm the closest akin person to Santa. And I really believe in the power of play, and that, there's three things that play really does for us. We learn to problem solve, we learn skills development, and we learn social interactions with others. And then I tell a story from my experience in the toy business, typically, one where I made mistakes, because success is a sucky teacher. We tend to learn from making mistakes. And then I unpack those lessons. And the point is really just to help founders who are starting out, or maybe have hit their sort of ceiling of complexity and maybe feeling a little bit frustrated in their business, but just inspire them that, it's possible. Like, if I can do it, you can do it. Because there's two different ways in life you're going to learn: from your own mistakes, which is knowledge, or wisdom, learn from mistakes of others. And the latter is a much more cost-effective way to get to the outcomes. You got to be willing to go through great struggles. There's no other path forward without it. So,
For some of our listeners that may have struck them a little odd because so much of our media and our entrepreneurship media talks about these success stories, and everything is always, great and easy and rewarding and the whole deal. And, I want our listeners to know that it's not pain as in like this is a bad thing,
Mm.
versus we're encouraging you to embrace this discomfort and to lean in order to create something big and something wonderful throughout life. There's always this element of discomfort. It's scary to get up on stage and speak in front of
Mhm.
people. It's scary to put out a book and not know how people are going to react to it. It's scary to take that first step. But when you start small and you continuously to lean into discomfort, what you'll find is the things that kept you awake at night today.
I think that's well said. If you want to have more, you need to become more. And part of becoming more is being willing to expand your comfort zone, which is really what you're describing. And it's hard because fear, which is natural, of course, is not optimal, pushes back against us. But on the other side of fear is progress. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I tell people my life is a series of happy accidents. I'm a kid from the prairies of Canada that had no business being or doing anything that I'm doing today. Where I grew up, it was oil field or agriculture. And it was only because I was willing to lean in and push the possibilities and expand my comfort zone by willing to do things that were scary. And on the other side of that, you find out, oh, that wasn't quite as bad as I thought. So
And you did it consistently.
consistently, just like you do going to the gym consistently.
So this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say is your best piece of advice for the CEO and founder listening who wants to know, how do I get my business beyond seven figures?
Invest in yourself. If you want to run faster, run with faster people. It starts with associations. Like find people that have the fruit on the tree of what you're looking for and start to hang out with them. Right. And I'm not talking about the superficial stuff that they post on Instagram showing off. That's just the very shiny, polished version of life. If they truly got that stuff, they went through a lot to get it for it to be lasting and enduring. But, it still comes back to it's not what you do or what you have, it's who you become. And that becoming is invest in yourself and associate with people that raise your game.
I noticed in reading your bio and whatnot, you put a high emphasis on the quality of your life. And I'd ask our listeners to look at their life and measure their success, not by what you have in your bank account, but rather what have you done to improve the quality of your life. And, you've obviously accomplished many great things, had great exits. Your two companies right now are crushing it, doing really, really awesome. We owe our success. We make all this money for what? To have a better quality of life. We can live that better quality of life and focus on that right away by making life happen for us.
Mhm.
And I noticed that you put a lot of emphasis in that, and that doesn't come by accident. That's very intentional. My man, people want to learn more about you and your book and all the other stuff. Where do we direct them?
Well, if you want to learn about the companies, I encourage you to go to pellacase.com and lomi.com, and you'll see we're trying to create a waste-free future. We boldly tell people we're missions with companies. And it's been super exciting just to know that we're really trying to make a difference. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to my website, which is bradpedersen.com. And Pedersen is spelled all with E's and D's as in Delta. Most people get that wrong. So you can go there. And the book, if you want to check that out, startupsantabook.com. And if you enter your email, we will send you some free videos and tools and things like that. Actually, the first chapter as well. So just put a bunch of resources there that I think will be helpful to founders, again, just to inspire them, give them hope, and also just maybe show them a path that may be less difficult than the one I took.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brad. And again, that is bradpedersen.com or Pedersen, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And then Startup Santa, a toy maker's tale of 10 business lessons learned from timeless toys. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. There was a little bit of hard talk, obviously, when we were talking about pain, discomfort, and whatnot. However, as we learn to embrace it, believe it or not, you'll learn to love it. You'll learn to crave it, because you'll see as you embrace this discomfort, you'll continue to grow and become more resilient. So Again, this wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. For more tips, strategies, and information for taking your company beyond seven figures, also check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gadet with my new friend, Brad Pedersen, and I will see you in another episode.